Hello, welcome to this episode of White Glove Geography, looking at UK food, water and energy issues. Today we're looking at the growing demand for high value food products, and that's from LICs. Key themes are seasonal products, LIC exports, high value foods and the influence of media. The UK has seen an increased demand for food that's produced in LICs and NEEs. What happens is the food is exported from LICs and imported into the UK. Now, of course, that means there's got to be some transport going on, and that's something called food miles. So if some potatoes are moved, say, from Egypt to the UK, let's say 4,000 miles, then that's 4,000 miles worth of food miles. And that adds to what's called the carbon footprint, because that's energy that's being used, energy from fuel and transport, and energy actually in the production of the food. So maybe tractors that are on the land. To reduce the food miles, to reduce the carbon footprint, people suggest that it might be good to shop locally and also buy goods that are what's called in season at that particular point. We'll look at those a little bit later. Now, the UK is not what's called self-sufficient in food production. We have to import some of our food. Not all of the land in the UK is suitable for growing food. So on the screen here, we've got on the left-hand side, we've got a relief map, and that shows the height of the land, the topography of the land, the shape of the land. So you can see in the north and particularly in the west, you can't be growing food in those areas because those are hillsides, and it's difficult to grow food on hillsides, both in terms of the quality of the soil and also getting machinery on the hillsides. The centre one talks about the climate. So the colours show that in the north and also in the west, we've got lots and lots of rainfall. The ground is probably going to be quite sodden, it's going to be waterlogged, it's going to be difficult to grow things. So the east of the UK there is probably the best environment for that. Also, the ISO lines, so those lines that are on there, they join up points of equal temperature. In the north of the UK, it's probably too cold to be growing food. So it's the south of the UK where you got most of the food production. And that results in, on the right hand side, where does the most food production take place? What type of farming in each place? The dark green, you've got hill farming, and that kind of correlates, that matches in with the relief map on the left. And the one we're thinking about here particularly is where you grow things out of the ground. That's arable farming. So it's a very limited area of arable farming. Also, if you take into account the urban areas, there's huge numbers of urban areas, cities and towns on there. So you can't grow things in those areas either. So this is why the food production in the UK isn't self-sufficient. We need to import food and goods. In the UK, over recent years, there's been an increase in the amount of what's called disposable income. And that's the difference between how much money you receive into your household and the amount of money that has to go out of your household, say, on bills. And the gap between that over recent years has increased. So people have more disposable income, therefore have more choice over the types of food that they buy. Now, some of the foods that we have in the UK, they're quite expensive at certain times of the year because of something called seasonality. So in June, for example, strawberries are really cheap in the UK because that's when we produce our strawberries in the UK. However, at other times of the year, a pint of strawberries could be £2 or £3 or even £4 because they're imported from other countries, and therefore the transport costs that are incurred in that. And we're prepared to pay quite high prices for these goods because of the increase in disposable income. So in wintertime, say strawberries from Morocco. When potatoes are not in season, potatoes from Egypt. When grapes are not in season, grapes from Chile. So here's some examples of the types of goods. Also, beyond the kind of regular things that we often see in supermarkets, there are other goods that are available, and they're often seen through types of programs like MasterChef or Bake Off, or maybe influencers on social media, and they'll tell us about different types of goods that are available from different countries. So there's a media influence that exposes people to different types of food in different parts of the world, and that increases the demand for those. So some of those might be kind of in terms of fashion as well. In terms of the import and the export, there are positives and negatives that we'll explore in the next slide. We talked about the seasonality of foods. So for example, in the UK, strawberries, they're grown in the summer. So June and July, there's loads of strawberries. They're really cheap. You can go strawberry picking yourself and for a kind of get a big basket of strawberries for a really small amount of money spent on those. However, in wintertime, they're going to be really expensive, maybe even 6 or 7 strawberries for £3 or £4. So we're talking like really expensive. So these are foods that are in season or out of season, and that depends on the growing conditions that we need. Now, in LICs, when they export goods to us, there are some positives. There are also some negatives. The positives are it gives reliable wages. It gives jobs. There's going to be jobs in growing the products, in transport, in production. Also, those jobs, those people are going to be paying tax to the government, which the knock-on effect of that is the government can spend it on infrastructure and social projects, so improving schools, improving healthcare. So those are all the positives. However, there's also negatives. In the production of these foods, water might be taken away from local villages and be used on farms to grow these products. There might be fewer regulations in LICs to protect workers. It might be that people, instead of growing food for themselves and their own family, are actually growing food for us. So it takes away from the food production in their own country. So there are positives and there are also negatives as well.